The great ship hung in the dark above Earth. It was not shaped like any human vessel. It was smooth and silent, a silver teardrop against the black. For weeks, it had done nothing. It just watched. Humanity held its breath. On the orbital station Unity, people tried to act normal. Technicians floated through corridors. Scientists studied data from the silent visitor. But everyone felt the weight of it. This was the moment they had dreamed of. First contact. They had worked so hard, finally uniting their divided planet, finally building ships that could jump between stars. They were ready to say hello. Secretary General Kim Jong watched the main screen. His face showed no emotion. He was a man carved from stone, people said. He had to be. Leading a planet that so recently fought itself was not a job for a soft man. Next to him stood Lee Dae-hyeon, the military commander. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back. They are sending a shuttle, a young officer said, her voice tight. Good, Kim Jong said. His voice was low and calm. Follow the welcome protocol. Exactly. The shuttle that detached from the teardrop ship was elegant. It moved with a quiet purpose that human engines could not match. It docked with the Unity station without a sound. The air in the docking bay grew cold. The hatch opened. Ambassador Valair stepped out. They were tall, very thin, with skin like polished gray stone. Their eyes were large and black, absorbing light. They wore simple robes that seemed to shift color. A small device hovered near their throat, translating their words before they even spoke them. I am Ambassador Valair of the Galactic Council, the voice said. It was smooth and without feeling. I bring a message for the dominant species of this world. Kim Jong stepped forward. I am Kim Jong, Secretary General of the United Nations of Earth. We welcome you in peace. He gave a short, respectful bow. Valair did not bow back. Their black eyes swept over the humans in the bay. They saw the hope on the technicians' faces. They saw the tension in Lee Dae-hyeon's shoulders. A flicker of something passed over their features. It might have been pity or contempt. Your words are noted, Valair said. The Council has observed your rapid ascent. Your development of faster-than-light travel in particular has triggered a review. A wave of relief went through the human observers. A review. That was normal. That was bureaucratic. They could pass a review. We are eager to comply with any galactic standards. Kim Jong said. There are no standards for you to comply with, Valair replied. The coldness in the translated voice was now unmistakable. There is only the Edict of Managed Progress. It exists to protect the stability of the galactic community from the chaos of unchecked growth. Valair gestured. A hologram bloomed in the air between them. It showed complex legal text in a flowing alien script. Your species has reached a threshold. Your technology, specifically your warp drives and your research into artificial intelligence, is now classified as a potential instability. Therefore, the Galactic Council issues the following decree. The air left the room. You will immediately cease all faster-than-light travel. All existing warp-capable vessels are to be dismantled under Council supervision. All research nodes focused on advanced physics, synthetic consciousness, and dimensional manipulation are to be shuttered. A Council oversight team will be stationed in your system for a period of 500 of your years to guide your development along a more harmonious path. Silence. It was a silence so deep, it felt like a physical force. The hope on the technicians' faces died, replaced by confusion, then by dawning horror. 500 years. A quarantine. A cage. Lee Dae-hyeon's voice was a rough growl. You are asking us to stop breathing, to go backwards. I am not asking, Valair said, finally looking at the commander. This is the law. It is for your own protection. Young species, driven by emotion and short-term desire, often destroy themselves with the power you now toy with. We prevent that tragedy. You should be grateful for our guidance." Kim Jun felt a cold fury settle in his stomach, but his face remained still. "This is non-negotiable?" "It is the conclusion of the review," Valère said, as if explaining to a child. "You have one of your weeks to provide a formal acceptance. A council vessel will then arrive to begin the process." Resistance, they added, their black eyes lingering on Li Daihan, would be illogical, and dealt with swiftly. Without another word, Valère turned and walked back into their shuttle. The hatch sealed. The humans stood in the docking bay, watching the elegant craft detach and glide back to the silver teardrop. The station was not silent for long. A roar of outrage, of fear, of disbelief erupted across every channel. Kim Jun walked slowly back to the command center, Li Daihan beside him. The stone of his face had a crack now, a tightness around his eyes. "They see us as animals," Li Daihan muttered. "To be put in a pen." "They see us as a problem," Kim Jun corrected quietly. "One they have solved many times before." In a secure lab deep within the station, a young woman was already working. Park Soo-min had been the lead linguist for the first contact team. She had studied every signal, every frequency from the alien ship. While others listened to Valère's words, she had been studying the carrier wave of the transmission itself. Now, her face was pale on her screen's glow. The words of the ultimatum were terrible, but the signal behind them was worse. "Secretary General." Her voice came over a private channel to Kim Jun. "You need to see this, now." Minutes later, Kim Jun and Li Daihan entered her lab. It was covered in screens showing sound waves and chemical formulas. "What is it, Soo-min?" Kim Jun asked. She took a deep breath. "The ultimatum. It wasn't just a message. It was a weapon. A subtle one." She pointed to a graph. The transmission was broadcast on a specific set of resonant frequencies. "I ran a simulation. These frequencies, they interact with the human amygdala and prefrontal cortex. They are designed to induce feelings of profound submission, helplessness, and fear." Li Daihan stared. "They tried to brainwash us? From space?" "Not exactly brainwash," Soo-min said. "More like a push. A very strong, very clever push to make their request seem not only reasonable, but like the only safe option. To make us want to obey." She pulled up another file. "I found similar patterns buried in old signals from other pre-contact species in the Council's territory. Species that are now very quiet, very compliant." Kim Jun looked at the graph. The cold fury in his stomach became a burning certainty. This was not law. This was not protection. This was the oldest story in the human book, a powerful force trying to break a younger one, using any tool available. "They did not come to welcome us," he said, his voice like iron. "They came to put a leash on us, and they assumed we would not even feel it tightening." He looked at Li Daihan, whose jaw was set. He looked at Park Soo-min, whose eyes were bright with anger now, not fear. "They have made a very large mistake," Kim Jun said. "They have shown us their true face. And they have shown us we are not as weak as they think." The first part of the human response was not a shout. It was a whisper. A gathering of voices from across a stunned world, slowly hardening into a single, unbreakable will. The ultimatum was broadcast everywhere. The people saw Valère's cold delivery. And instead of fear, they felt a fire dot in his quiet office. Kim Jun began to write. He did not write a plea. He did not write a counteroffer. He wrote a simple statement of fact. Park Soo-min worked beside him, translating his human words into the perfect, cold glyphic of the Council. She made sure the translation carried none of the hidden frequencies. It would be pure, clear, and undeniable dot at the end of the week. A signal was sent from Earth, not from the station. It was directed at the silver teardrop ship, where Ambassador Villers waited for the inevitable surrender of another young, emotional species. The signal was not a voice. It was a text file. It was very short. When Valar opened it, their gray skin seemed to grow paler. For the first time in a long career of delivering edicts, they felt something unfamiliar. It was the cold prickle of surprise. The message did not beg. It did not negotiate. It stated only this: the United Nations of Earth rejects your ultimatum. Your attempted neurochemical coercion constitutes an act of aggression. Therefore, from this moment, a state of war exists between humanity and the Galactic Council. Below the words was Park Soo-min's final touch, the precise frequency formulas of their manipulation, attached like evidence in a trial. On the Unity Station, Kim Jun watched the stars. Lee Dae-hyun was already moving, speaking in low tones to his commanders on Earth. Park Soo-min closed her screens, her work just beginning. The silent teardrop ship did not move. It simply waited. But something had changed. The game was not over. A new one, with rules the galaxy did not know, had just begun. The silence did not last. The text file from Earth was a stone thrown into a still pond, and the galaxy was the pond. Ripples spread faster than light through the quantum-entangled networks of 1,000 advanced civilizations. On the Unity Station, the mood was not one of celebration, but of grim focus. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, humming energy. Kim Jun had not slept. He stood in the command center, his eyes on the main screen, showing the silver teardrop, still motionless. They had expected a reply. An instant, overwhelming strike, perhaps. The silence was more unnerving. Lee Dae-hyun approached, a datapad in his hand. They have not moved, but long-range sensors are picking up a new warp signature. A single vessel. It will arrive at the edge of the Sol system in approximately 72 hours. It is larger. Military configuration. Kim Jun nodded slowly. Their first move. Not the full fist. A single finger to swat the fly. What are your orders, sir? Lee Dae-hyun's voice was steady, but his knuckles were white where he gripped the pad. Broadcast the evidence. To everyone. Every frequency, on every band. Send Soo-min's analysis of their manipulation, the chemical formulas, everything. Not just to them. To anyone who might be listening. The Council will block it, Dae-hyun said. Probably. But some of it will get through. To their client species. Let them wonder. Let them see that their benevolent guardians use chemical tricks. Kim Jun finally turned from the screen. And bring me the final draft of the declaration. The one for our own people. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk on Earth. The news was not met with panic, but with a strange, unified fury. The revelation of the Council's attempted neural coercion had turned fear into rage. This was not about technology anymore. It was about freedom of thought. The oldest human fear. Being controlled. In a fortified command bunker deep under the Korean peninsula. Lee Dae-hyun's teams were already at work. They called it the Human Doctrine. It was not a plan for winning a traditional war. It was a plan for making war unwinnable for an enemy who expected a straight fight. They are logical. They are predictable. They fight by a book written 1,000 years ago. Dae-hyun said to a room of grim-faced officers from every nation. We will not. Our first rule. If it works, it is a valid tactic. Our second rule. Their strength is their rigidity. Our strength is our chaos. Screens showed schematics. Not of giant battleships. They could not build those in time. They showed modified mining vessels, stealth-coated probes, and swarms of simple, cheap drones. They showed computer viruses and cultural subversion packages. They showed maps of the solar system, not as a territory to defend, but as a maze in which to trap a giant. They will come to teach us a lesson, the Ion said. We will give them a new lesson to learn. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In her lab, Park Soo-min was surrounded by a different kind of weapon. Lines of alien code scrolled across her screens. The carrier wave data from the Ultimatum was a key. It gave her a way into the Council's linguistic and digital architecture. It was all math and logic underneath. And logic had cracks. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She was not a soldier, but in that moment, she was the most important general in the war. She was building a digital ghost. A virus, but not one that destroyed. This one was more subtle. It was built on paradoxes, on irrational human concepts like irony and double meanings and stories with no clear moral. It was a logical poison pill for a hyperlogical enemy. A young man with tired eyes and messy hair brought her a cup of coffee. Kang Min-soo was her opposite in every way. Where she was precise, he was intuitive. He was a programming savant, known for AI that behaved in weird, creative ways. The core is ready, Soo-min, he said, peering at her screen. The paradox engine. I fed it every illogical human story I could find. Fairy tales, ancient myths, jokes that don't translate. It's confused. And beautiful. Will it work? She asked, her voice quiet. He grinned, a flash of light in the gloom. Their systems are built for perfect sense. This thing makes no sense at all. It will work like a sneeze in a clockwork factory. They won't know how to fix it because they won't know what's broken. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. 72 hours later, the new ship arrived. It was called a Pacifier-class cruiser by the Council. To human eyes, it was a dagger of dark metal and cold light, 5 kilometers long. It did not enter the inner system. It took position near Neptune, a demonstration of overwhelming power. Its commander, a being named T-Volume, sent a simple, wideband signal. People of Earth, you have issued a juvenile proclamation. Stand down your defenses. Surrender the individuals responsible for this rebellion. Compliance will reduce your period of oversight. This is your only warning. On the bridge of the experimental stealth ship Mujige, Captain Choi Yuna listened to the message. Her ship was small, shaped like a flattened manta ray, its surface drinking in light and sensor waves. It was not built to fight a cruiser. It was built to hide and to listen. Juvenile proclamation, her tactical officer muttered. They still don't understand, Yuna said. Her voice was calm, pragmatic. She had been a test pilot for the stealth program, chosen for her ice-cool nerves. They think we are children having a tantrum. Good, let them think that. She turned to her communication station. Signal to command. The Mujige is in position. We are shadowing the target, awaiting the package. The package was Soo-min and Min-soo's virus, loaded into a modified torpedo casing. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk in the bunker. Lee Dae-hyan looked at Kim Jun. The cruiser is powering its primary weapons. They are targeting our orbital shipyards and defense platforms. A disabling salvo. They want to humiliate us, not destroy the planet. Yet, Kim Jun sat very still. This was the moment. The first real move. Send the declaration to our people. And then authorize Operation First Whisper. A minute later, every screen on Earth, on the stations, on the ships, changed. Kim Jun's face appeared, not filled with fiery rhetoric, but with a grave, unshakable calm. People of Earth, he began. The Galactic Council did not offer us a hand. They offered us a collar. They did not offer us a place. They offered us a cage. They tried to use the hidden tools of a coward, to make us afraid of our own future. They declared us too emotional, too chaotic to be free. He paused, his dark eyes looking into the camera, into the soul of every person watching. So let us show them our emotion. Let us show them our chaos. Let us show them the terrible, beautiful will of a species that has fought for every scrap of freedom it has ever known. We do not fight for conquest. We fight for the right to choose our own path. We fight for the next 500 years of our story, and we will write it ourselves. The speech was short. It ended not with a cheer, but with a silent, planet-wide resolve. It was a declaration of war, not to the council, but to themselves. A promise dot as the speech finished, Lee Dihyon gave the order. On the Mujige, Choi Yuna heard the command. Package is away. The modified torpedo, invisible to passive sensors, shot from her ship. It did not head for the cruiser's hull. It headed for its main communications array. It was not an explosion of metal, but of light and data. It attached and began to transmit. On the bridge of the pacifier, Commander T. Volume watched as the human orbital platforms braced for impact. He felt a flicker of disappointment. It was always the same with young species. Bluster, then collapse. An alert chimed. Commander, a minor data anomaly on the outer hull. Likely micrometeorite impact. Ignore it, T. Volume said. Begin the disabling salvo. Target their primary shipyard. Minimal force. The weapons officer's hands moved across his console. Then they stopped. Commander, the targeting system is recalibrating. What? It is running a diagnostic. It is citing a logical inconsistency in its core threat assessment protocols. T. Volume leaned forward. Override. I cannot. The override requires acknowledging the paradox. It asks if a door that is both open and closed can be passed through. On the Mujige, Kang Min-soo watched his screens, giggling. It's in. The fairy tales are in the machine. Chaos erupted on the cruiser. Lights flickered. Non-essential systems shut down or began playing strange, atonal human music from old archives. The targeting system, trying and failing to resolve Min-soo's paradoxes, began to loop. The main power conduits hesitated, their safety protocols arguing with themselves. The ship did not fire. It hung in space, confused, its perfect logic turned against itself. Choi Yuna saw her opening. Command, the target is experiencing a systemic failure. Its weapons are offline. Its shields are fluctuating. Lee Dae-hyun's voice was sharp. Not good enough. They will reboot. They will adapt. We need to make the lesson stick. Yuna understood. She looked at her crew. They were not soldiers bred for war. They were engineers, scientists, explorers. But they were angry. Prepare the boarding pods, she said, her voice cold. We are going over there. We are not going to destroy it. We are going to take it apart and learn how it works. As the small, stealthy pods shot from the Mujige towards the crippled giant, the galaxy watched. They saw the mighty pacifier, class cruiser, silent and dark. They saw the tiny, daring human vessels, crawling towards it like ants on a sleeping beanstalk. The message was no longer in words. It was in action. The Council had sent an ultimatum. Earth had replied with a declaration. And now, Earth had just thrown the first punch. It was not a punch of force, but of breathtaking, terrifying audacity. The war had truly begun. The bridge of the Council cruiser was a tomb of light and sound. Alarms wailed in soft, melodic chimes that did nothing to hide the panic. Commander T. Volume stared at his main screen, which displayed a nonsensical rotating diagram. It was supposed to be a tactical map. Now it was a children's puzzle. The words scrolling beside it were in glyphic, but they made no sense. The river that flows upstream seeks the mountain that dreams of the sea. Report. Taval's voice, usually so calm, was sharp. Primary systems are in logic lock. Commander, the science officer said, their tentacles fluttering in distress. The intrusion is not a virus. It is a series of philosophical queries and narrative loops. Our systems are trying to solve them. It is consuming 90% of processing power. Weapons? Offline. The firing protocols require a confirmed threat assessment. The system cannot define what is a threat because the intrusion keeps asking if a sound is a threat if no one is there to hear it. Tivalium felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the ship's climate. This was not warfare. This was madness. A new alert, this one harsh and red. Physical breach. Outer hull, Section 7 Alpha. Multiple small craft. They have cut through. Security. Repel them. T-Volume ordered, but security was confused. The internal defense turrets, when activated, simply spun in circles. Their targeting A is debating the ethical implications of harming a potential guest. The doors to the bridge hissed shut, then immediately opened again, then shut, caught in a loop about whether closure constituted aggression. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk in the dark. Metallic belly of the cruiser, Captain Choi Yuna stepped out of the boarding pod. Her suit was sleek and black, not armor, but a stealth and environmental suit. The gravity here was lighter than Earth's. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet, like decaying flowers. Teams. Check in, she whispered into her COMS. Voices responded, calm and professional. Her crew, 20 men and women, were scientists and engineers from the Mujige. Kang Min-soo was among them, a data spike in his hand, his eyes wide behind his visor. The architecture is amazing, he muttered, looking at the pulsing conduits on the walls. But their network security is linear. It's like they've never met a liar before. Min-soo, focus, Yuna said. You know the priority. Find their data core. Drain it. Everything. Engineering with me. We're going to their main drive. We're not planting bombs. We're taking pictures. They moved like ghosts through the vast corridors. The few council crew they encountered were tall, slender beings who stared in utter confusion. They were not soldiers. They were technicians. They had no idea what to do when a small human in a black suit held up a hand and said, firmly, stay there, please. They stayed. The sheer strangeness of it was paralyzing. Yuna's team reached the engineering heart of the ship. It was a cathedral of technology, humming with a power that made their teeth ache. A lone engineer, an older being with frills around its neck, stood before a console, tapping desperately. You must stop, it said, its translation device buzzing with fear. You are causing irreparable confusion. We're just looking, said one of Yuna's engineers, a woman named Ji-un. She was already placing small sensors on the drive housing. How does this work? Is it a singularity drive? A dimensional fold? That is classified. The engineer hissed. Not anymore, Ji-un said, and she smiled. Meanwhile, Kang Min-soo found the data core. It was a crystal pillar, glowing with inner light. He plugged his data spike into an access port. Back on the Mujige, Park Soo-min waited, her hands ready at her own console. I'm in, Min-soo whispered. It's huge. Thousands of years of records. It's all so ordered, Soo-min. It's beautiful and terrible. Just get it all. Soo-min's voice came back, tense. Every star chart, every technical schematic, every historical log. Start the download. As data began to flood through the spike, Min-soo couldn't resist. He peeked. He opened a file labeled Subject Species, K7X Managed Integration. He saw images of a beautiful, bird-like people. Then he saw images of their cities, silent and still. Reports noted successful application of pacification frequencies and integration into the Council's agricultural labor pool. His blood ran cold. Sumin? This isn't just about us. They've done this before. Many times. Bring it home, Minsu, she said, her voice grim. Bring all of it home. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On the bridge, T-Volume finally managed to isolate the infected systems by physically shutting down entire sections. Lights went dark across the ship. The strange music stopped. An angry silence took its place, systems rebooting. Logic lock clearing. Weapons coming online in 60 seconds, the tactical officer reported. T-Volume looked at the internal scans. The small human pests were still in his engineering bay and data core. Rage, a hot and unfamiliar emotion, filled him. Seal those sections. Vent the atmosphere. Flush them into space. But as the orders were given, the humans were already leaving. Yuna's team had gotten more than enough scans. Min-Su had finished the download, pulling the spike from the crystal pillar, just as a security field crackled to life around it. Back to the pods. Now, Yuna ordered. They ran not in panic, but with a swift, practiced retreat. They had what they came for. As the last pod sealed and detached, the human team saw the giant cruiser come back to life. Lights blazing, weapons powering up with a low, angry hum. The Mujige retrieved the pods and slipped away into the dark, its stealth systems making it a ghost once more. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk on the bridge of the cruiser. T-Volume felt a moment of savage satisfaction. The humans were fleeing. His ship was restored. He would still teach them their lesson. He targeted the fleeing invisible ship on pure guesswork, firing a wide-area plasma burst to scourge the space where it might be. But as he prepared to fire on the human shipyards, a new signal arrived. It was not from Earth. It was a broadcast, wideband, on every frequency. It was being sent from the Mujige. It was a video. Grainy, shaky, taken from a helmet cam. It showed the interior of the cruiser's data core. It showed Kang Min-Su's hand accessing the files. And then, clearly, it displayed the records of the K7X species. The before and after. The words pacification frequencies. The voiceover was Park Soo-min's, speaking in cool, perfect glyphic. This is the Galactic Council's definition of managed progress. This is what they have done to others. This is what they planned for Earth. They are not guides. They are farmers. And we were to be their newest livestock. The broadcast ended. Then it repeated. Duvall's satisfaction turned to ice. This was worse than any physical attack. This was exposure. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds under Council protection, the signal was heard. Some blocked it instantly. But some, in secret, heard. A flicker of memory, long suppressed, stirred. The broadcast did not call for rebellion. It simply showed the truth. And truth, in a galaxy built on controlled narratives, was a weapon of mass destruction. Commander T-Volume received a new priority order. It was from the Council High Command. The order was simple and frantic. Destroy that broadcasting ship at all costs. Then return to Council space immediately. Do not engage further. The situation has changed. But it was too late. The Mujige was gone, a needle in the cosmic haystack. And the story was out. On Earth, in the bunker, Lee Dae-Hyan watched the stolen data flood in. Technical schematics, star maps, Council fleet deployments. He smiled, a hard, thin smile. Now we know the blueprints of the cage, he said to Kim Jun. Kim Jun nodded, watching the repeated broadcast. And now others know they are in one. The first battle was over. The Council cruiser, powerful and undamaged, turned and fled the Sol system, humiliated not by force, but by a computer virus made of fairy tales and a burglary in the night. They had come to deliver a spanking. They had left with their darkest secrets stolen and broadcast to the universe. Humanity had not matched their strength. They had made it irrelevant. The war was no longer about Earth's survival. It had become a spotlight, shining on the rusted locks of the galaxy's oldest prison. And from the shadows, other eyes began to watch and to wonder. The galaxy was no longer quiet. The silence that followed the Council cruiser's retreat was not peace. It was the tense, humming quiet of a system shocked into a new state. The human broadcast, that shaky video of stolen files, was a stone dropped into a still pond. The ripples were spreading. On Earth, they called it the awakening. For the Galactic Council, it was a contagion. Park Soo-min and Kang Min-soo worked day and night in a reinforced lab. The mountain of data they had stolen was more than just schematics. It was a history book, a confession. They saw the patterns now. Species after species that had developed warp drive or advanced AI met by the Council, and then pacified. Their records showed successful integration. The videos showed beings with dull eyes, working in perfect, quiet harmony. The neural frequency signatures used on each species were there, like recipes. Humanity's was just the newest. They're not conquerors, Soo-min said, her voice hollow. They're gardeners, pruning the galaxy, keeping it tidy. Min-soo nodded, his usual humor gone. And we're the weeds. The unpredictable, messy weeds. This information did not stay on Earth. Lee Dae-hyun's human doctrine moved to its next phase. If Phase 1 was proving they could not be caged, Phase 2 was about showing others the lock on their own doors. They did not send more battleships. They had none to send. Instead, they sent ideas. Packets of data, wrapped in Soo-min's clever code and Min-soo's paradoxical encryption. They were not attacks. They were gifts. A small, fast probe, jury-rigged from an old comet survey craft, jumped to the edge of the system of the K7X, the bird-like people from the stolen files. It broadcast a single, tight message on the exact frequency used to pacify them. But it did not broadcast a subduing signal. It broadcast their own history back to them. Their songs, their art, their wars and their peace, unedited and raw. Then it vanished. On a mining world populated by the stout, rock-like Grum, a human-made drone looking like space debris, floated into their communication network. It did not hack. It offered a software patch, an update that just happened to filter out certain hypnotic subharmonics from the Council's news broadcasts. Slowly, the Grum began to argue again. A forgotten word re-entered their language. Why? The Council's response was confusion, then fury. They were used to putting down rebellions of force. How do you fight a rebellion of memory? How do you battle a ghost that whispers to your subjects that they were once, long ago, free? Ambassador Vylar stood before the Council's assembled leaders. The holographic chamber was vast, filled with the serene, ancient faces of 100 species. Or at least, the species that the Council allowed to rule. The human contagion must be purged. Valer insisted, their smooth voice now edged with static. A full fleet. Sterilize the system. It is the only logical response. An older being, its form shimmering like water, spoke. Logic? Your logic led to a cruiser being disarmed by a children's riddle. Your logic led to our archives being scattered like seeds to the wind. The humans do not fight logic. They fight with stories. And the stories are spreading. Then we burn the storytellers. Valer said, and make martyrs? The being replied, their story becomes a legend that reaches further than any broadcast. No, we contain them. We isolate the narrative. So the council moved, but slowly, like a giant trying to swat gnats. They sent fleets to reinforce their client worlds, to jam new signals. But the human packets were too clever, too strange. They hid in poetry. They were embedded in what looked like harmless trade invoices. Kong Min Su had programmed them to evolve, to change their digital shape like a virus. On Earth, the pressure was immense. They knew the hammer would fall. Kim Jun saw the reports of council armadas gathering. They had bought time, but time was running out. Captain Choi Yuna and the Mujige were now the tip of the spear. Their new mission was not theft, but delivery. They were to take a physical data core, a hard copy of all the stolen secrets, to a neutral species, the Yil, who were known to be historians. If Earth fell, the truth would not. The journey was through patrolled space. The Mujige slipped between stars, a shadow. But the council had learned. They were not looking for a ship. They were looking for a hole in space, a silence where there should be noise. Near the Yil homeworld, they set a trap, a net of gravity sensors, fine as spider silk. The Mujige hit the net. Alarms screamed. They've found us. The tactical officer yelled. Yuna's heart hammered, but her voice was calm. Evasive pattern Min Su. Deploy the chaff. The ship shuddered as it released clouds of smart debris, each piece echoing the Mujige's stealth signature. 3 council interceptors, small and fast, peeled away from their station. They opened fire not with lasers, but with logic locks, trying to feed the Mujige's computers the same paradoxical poison. Their AI is adapting to Min Su's tricks. Su Min's voice came over the come from Earth, strained. They've installed cultural filters. They're learning to understand our stories. On board, Min Su grinned, his fingers a blur. Good, then let's give them a new genre, horror. He unleashed a program he called The Monster Under the Bed. It wasn't a paradox. It was pure, irrational fear. Data packets designed to trigger deep, primal suspicion in any advanced AI, the fear of the unknown in its own code, the suspicion that it was not in control. It was messy, emotional, and completely illogical. The lead interceptor's weapons suddenly spun. Targeting its own wingmate, its eye convinced the other ship was a hostile copy of itself. The 2 council ships fired on each other. The Mujige weaved through the chaos, but a glancing hit from the 3rd ship damaged its primary drive. They were drifting, losing power. The Yil homeworld was close, but they would not reach it. We have to deliver the core, Yuna said. She looked at her crew. In the life pod. It's small, stealthy. 1 person could make it. Min Su stood up. I'll go. I programmed the core's defenses. It's my monster. I should deliver it. There was no time to argue. They loaded the data core, glowing softly, into the single life pod. Min Su climbed in. He gave a shaky thumbs up. Tell them I'm a hero. It'll annoy my sister. The pod shot away, a tiny speck aimed at the green planet below. The Mujige, wounded, turned to face the remaining interceptor, drawing its fire. The pod, little more than a bullet, entered the Yil atmosphere. Council signals tried to trace it, but its signature was lost in the thermal noise of entry. It crashed in a marsh, not far from a Yil settlement. Kong Min Su stumbled out, the core in his arms. The Yil found him, their large, liquid eyes filled with curiosity, not threat. They were historians, keepers of stories. He held out the core. This, he said, through a translation device, is the story they didn't want you to have. The true story. Back in space, the Mujige, shields failing, played its final trick. Yuna ordered the ship to broadcast, on an open channel, the entire technical readout of the Council's logic lock weapon, its source code, its weaknesses, giving it away for free. Then, as the interceptor moved in for the kill, the Mujaja's reactor went into emergency shutdown, making the ship a dead, silent lump of metal. The interceptor, confused by the sudden silence and the data gift, hesitated. In that moment, a Yill civilian ship, brave and curious, moved between them, claiming the Mujige as a historical artifact. The Council interceptor, under new orders to avoid narrative incidents, withdrew. On Earth, they watched the Mujige go silent. They held their breath. Then, a signal came from the Yill homeworld. It was simple. The story is safe. We are listening. Kim Jun leaned back in his chair. They had lost a ship. They had almost lost brave people. But they had won something more. They were no longer alone. The awakening was no longer a human whisper. It was a conversation. The Council's neat, orderly garden was sprouting weeds of doubt and memory in 1,000 places. And for the first time, the gardeners looked at their tools and wondered if they were holding the wrong ones. The war was no longer about borders or bombs. It was about the past and who got to control it. And humanity had just set the past free. The war was not won with a bang. It ended with a long, silent sigh across the stars. The Galactic Council did not surrender. It simply stopped. Its fleets, gathered for a crushing blow against Earth, were recalled. The orders were not shouted. They were whispers, full of confusion and a new, terrible fear. A fear of irrelevance. The Yill historians did their work. The data core delivered by Kong Minsu was studied, verified, and then shared. Not with anger, but with the solemn duty of archivists. They sent the records to other neutrals, to academics, to species on the fringes of council space. The story of the managed progress was no longer a human accusation. It was a documented fact, entered into the galactic record. On 100 client worlds, the quiet grew louder. It was not the noise of rebellion, but the sound of questions. Workers on the Grum mining asteroids asked for rest periods, citing their old cultural practices. The K7X bird people began to sing their forbidden ancestral songs again, their voices weak at first, then stronger. The pacification frequencies still broadcast, but now, knowing what they were, the people fought against the drowsy feeling. They hummed old tunes to disrupt the signal. They told their children stories of flying free. The Council's greatest weapon, control of the narrative, was broken. You cannot rule a galaxy by logic alone when the logic has been exposed as a lie. A request for a meeting came, not an order. A request. It was sent to Earth, to Kim Jun. The location was a neutral station. Orbiting a dead star. Kim Jun stood in a simple plain room on the station. He wore a dark suit, no medals. Behind him was Lee Dae-Hyan, out of uniform, looking more like a tired professor than a general. Park Soo-ming was there too, as translator and advisor. On the other side of the wide, transparent table was Ambassador Valier. They looked smaller now, diminished. The serene confidence was gone, replaced by a brittle stillness. 2 other council elders were with them, their faces unreadable. Secretary General Valier began, their voice lacking its old power. "We are here to discuss terms of cessation." Kim Jun said nothing. He waited. The conflict has proven costly for stability, an elder said, a being of shifting light. "Your methods are disruptive." "Our methods were a response to your aggression," Kim Jun replied, his voice quiet. Su-min translated, her tone cool and precise. "You sent an ultimatum. You tried to manipulate our minds," we replied. "That is all." Valier's hands twitched. "You unleashed chaos. You have encouraged disobedience." Lee Dae-Hyan spoke for the first time. "We encouraged remembrance. There is a difference." The room was silent. Kim Jun placed a small device on the table. It played a short audio clip, the hidden, coercive frequency from the original Ultimatum, followed by the sound of a human heartbeat, steady and strong. Then he played another Agrum folk song, recently recorded, full of rough, joyful noise. "You believed your way was the only way," Kim Jun said. "You believed order was more important than freedom. We believe you cannot have one without the other. You tried to build a galaxy without conflict. You built a galaxy without growth. And what do you propose?" The shimmering elder asked, a hint of genuine curiosity in its voice. "Nothing," Kim Jun said. The word hung in the air. "We propose nothing for you. We do not want to rule. We do not want to manage you. Earth will be a sovereign world. Our space is our own. Your fleets will stay away. Your edicts will not apply to us. That is our only term. And the Gata? The stories you have spread?" Valere asked, a last flicker of anger in their eyes. Park Soo-min answered, "The data is history. It belongs to everyone now. You cannot untell a story. You can only choose what story you tell next." It was not a negotiation. It was a statement. The council representatives looked at each other. They had come prepared to argue over disarmament, over oversight, over limits. They were not prepared for someone who wanted nothing from them but to be left alone. It was a concept so simple it was revolutionary. Finally, the Elder of Light spoke. "The Council recognizes the sovereignty of the United Nations of Earth. The previous edict is rescinded. Your space is your own. There were no cheers, no signed treaties on fancy paper. Just a nod. The meeting was over." The council members left first, fading away into the corridors of the station. Kim Jun, Lee Dae-hyun, and Park Soo-min stood for a moment, looking at the dead star through the large window. Its cold light gave no warmth. "It's over?" Dae-hyun asked, as if he couldn't believe it. "This part is," Kim Jun said. "For us, for them, their work is just beginning. And it will be harder than any war." Weeks later, on Earth, life did not go back to normal. There was a new normal. The world was still united, but now by a shared memory of a different kind, not of fear, but of a choice they had made together. Captain Choi Yuna and the crew of the Mujige were welcomed home. The ship was a scarred hero, towed back by the Yil. Kang Min-soo returned too, quieter now, his jokes less frequent, his eyes older. He had seen the look on the Yil's faces when they understood the story. It had changed him. Lee Dae-hyun walked through a shipyard. They were not building weapons. They were building new kinds of ships, explorer vessels, built with a mix of human design and reverse-engineered council technology. They were faster, safer. Their purpose was not defense, but discovery. The human doctrine was retired, its principles filed away, hopefully forever. Park Soo-min now led a new institute. It was not for war. It was for translation, for cultural exchange. Requests were already coming in, not from the council, but from individual species, the Grum, the K7X, others. They wanted to learn about humanity. They wanted to share their own rediscovered histories. They wanted help building filters to block pacification signals for good. She was busy, and for the first time, her work filled her with hope, not dread. Kim Jun stood on a balcony at night, looking at the stars. They were the same stars, but they felt different. They were not a barrier. They were a door they had almost been locked away from forever. He thought about Valere's words, "You unleashed chaos." Perhaps they had, but they had also unleashed life. The galaxy had been a very quiet, very orderly museum. Humanity had simply turned on the lights and opened a window. The wind was now blowing in, and it carried the sounds of 1,000 different voices, talking, singing, arguing, living. They had not won by being stronger. They had won by being something the council could not understand and could not control, by being stubbornly, messily, creatively themselves. They had looked at a cage, and instead of trying to pick the lock, they had convinced everyone that the cage was an insult to their very souls. The war was over. The story, however, was just getting started. Humanity's story. And for the first time in a long time, for many across the galaxy, their own stories too. The silence was gone. In its place was a noise that was strange and beautiful and free. It was the sound of the future, writing itself.